Hello everyone, I'm joining all of the trendy witches. I'm wearing a hat for a spooky video today. So this one I found on Amazon. It's just like kind of a knitted crocheted deal, but I love it. And so we're gonna wear it today. So it is spooky time, and every point in the wheel of the year I try to make this video of what are my plans, because honestly a lot of times it changes year to year. And today I was just kind of curious, and so I went back to my video I had made in 2018, which was rough to watch, and it was a lot to see the comparison, because where I was then and where I am now are two very different places. And so this year it's going to be a very different Samhain than any that I have ever really had. So I'm not in college, I'm not in school, nothing like that, no official study things that I'm worried about and have to take up my time. And I'm also working for myself at this point. So my YouTube channels and my writing are my main focus. And so because of that, it leaves me wide open to have options to do stuff. And so it's a different point, and I have a lot of different emphasis now because, again, doing this full time and writing and like NaNoWriMo, if you don't know what that is, it's National Novel Writing Month next month. Starts in November. That's coming up, and so I have my fiction book that I've got planned to start then, which isn't really a Samhain plan, but it's just like it's Preptober time. And so I'm prepping for the book, doing the outlining this week, and then starting, scarily enough, next week, because Monday is Halloween, begins on Tuesday, will be NaNoWriMo, where I'm starting to write every single day. I have to write a chapter a day for my book, and then I'll have draft one done in the month. So very excited for that. But that's technically not a Samhain plan, but it's just one of those things that it's like, this is the first time I get to actively like be prepared for that and like get to really dedicate into getting what I want to do out of life happening. Like, I want to participate in NaNoWriMo and I want to be able to do these things, and it's like, oh my god. So I'm stoked. So the first thing is one that I have done every year, so it should be no surprise. We're grave visiting, as I always do. So we have a lot of graves. This is the first year I am officially saying I can't do it all in a day because I'm like, it's just too much. It's a lot, because we've had 2 people die this year, and so that means 2 more stops. Even if they're in the same cemetery, they're in different places, so we gotta like visit one and then visit the other. And then I am going to be setting up an altar at home for all of the dead that we can't go and visit. And that's either like, you know, we don't know where their ashes are. They never told us. We know where their ashes are, we cannot get there. And if they are buried in like different states and different things, so we're just gonna have an ancestor altar at home that we will be honoring them as well at home. And then I do also want to include a couple of like the spiritual teachers and just dead that I want to honor even though I'm not related to them. Just have a little spot for them as well. So again, that's like things that I do every single year. It's just getting to the point where we don't have a lot of time in the day because the trick-or-treaters start early. In order to be back home in time for trick-or-treats, we have to leave really early, and it's just impossible. So we're just splitting it up over the weekend. We're gonna take several days to just hit a couple of them a day and then come home and do whatever. So that way, Halloween day, I don't think we're gonna be going to any, and if we do, it's like the 2 closest to us, like proximity location-wise close, and then come right home and have time for trick-or-treats. Number 2, this kind of related back to watching my video from 2018 when I initially began the journey of Inner Temple of Witchcraft. That was supposed to take a year. Here we are, I'm finally finishing it. Finally did it. So today is actually the day that I am going to be recording the 13th lesson, the last lesson of the book. And then over the next few days, I don't know if it has other exercises in the chapter, obviously I haven't read it, but then we'll be concluding that. So that's on my Patreon, and I'll be talking about it sometime next week. But yeah, so I'm actually finishing Inner Temple of Witchcraft. Finally. It's taken so many tries, but I'm actually doing it. I actually stuck with it this year. It was rough, got a lot easier once I stayed consistent, and then I got to work from home and do what I wanted with my time. And then I had no excuses, so I haven't had any excuses, so I've actually gotten through it. Number 3, cooking a themed meal. So of course Facebook always posts these things of like different cute little recipes, and I want to try a couple of them. So there was like this pumpkin lasagna. Sorry, I'm not looking at you. I'm pulling it up on my phone that has no iCloud storage apparently, but it was such a cute idea. So it's called pumpkin lasagna. I don't even know if my screenshot says where it's from. Okay, simplisticallyliving.com. I don't know if you can find it, but I took a screenshot of the recipe before the ads loaded so that I could just get it all in one thing. It was so great. And then like 2 seconds later, all of the ads popped up, so you'd have to scroll through all of them for the printable option, which I think is really rude, but whatever. So we're gonna try that. My husband doesn't love cheesecake, and I think it's kind of a cheesecake thing, but you have like Oreo cookies for the base instead of graham crackers, and then you have cream cheese and like the stuff to make like obviously like a kind of cheesecake thing, but then you add a, ooh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find that, pumpkin spice pudding mix. So we're gonna try to do that. If not, I'm gonna try and find a recipe for like a pumpkin cheesecake, because I know that's gonna be good. And then, because he doesn't love cheesecake, I love cheesecake, I'm gonna make him this other recipe that I found, and it comes from the novicechefblog.com, and it's maple snickerdoodles, and I thought those sounded phenomenal. So we're gonna make that. Probably gonna make a stew, and it's going to have like the main meat is from an elk that my family had got, I think it was last year, and so we just have the frozen meat in the fridge, so, well, freezer, but gonna make a stew out of that. Throw in, you know, just like your usuals of like an onion, some potatoes, carrots, peas, corn, whatever. Mix it all up, add some seasonings, let that stew in the slow cooker all day, so the house is gonna smell phenomenal. And then have my blooming tea as that kind of be my main drink, because the bottle of wine that we will be having is very small, and I don't like alcohol much. My body doesn't like alcohol much, so I'm not gonna probably have more than like a shot glass worth of the wine. I don't know, maybe it's gonna be phenomenal and I'll have a full glass. I don't know, we'll see. But I'm planning on having my blooming tea, and then, oh, and at some point soon in the next couple days, I want to drive around and look at Halloween lights. That wasn't on my pre-made list, but that's something I forgot that I was gonna do. We do it for Yule every year. I've made it a tradition, I make it mandatory, that we get in the car, we get hot chocolate, and we drive around and look at all the all of the Christmas lights that everyone puts up, but I want to do it for Halloween this year. So, my husband, who works at a grocery store, was like, hey babe, did you know that they have, like, you know the Swiss mix for like hot chocolate? Yeah, they have a pumpkin spice one. And I was like, oh. So I'm gonna buy that like today and have pumpkin spice hot chocolate and go look at Halloween lights. So that's another thing that we're doing. I forgot to add that to my list, but that's something. But yeah, we're gonna have a magical meal of some sorts, and it'll be nice, and then I'm gonna be cooking that pretty much the whole day. I don't know all of the dishes involved yet, because budgeting is also a thing, but yeah, so that's something that's gonna be happening. I found that this is a really good time to see how well it's gonna actually work from Samhain until January 1st. As I start to plot and plan what my goals are for the year, how realistic is that going to be? And start to try and live that way that I want to live for the following year, but starting now. And so I'm just like, I've started to plot and plan, which leads to the last thing that I'm so excited to announce. I am writing a witchy book. I know, go figure. I technically have done this before, but this one is for reallys. So I have been outlining it for a little while, and I've gone back and forth on actually writing this book and really writing this book, because I love the idea of just a collection, like a small little pamphlet book of just a collection of rituals and not like a whole lot of like fluff behind it. But I just have gotten to the point where I'm like, no, my fluffity fluff writing is totally as valid as everybody else's fluffity fluff writing. So I am writing a witchy book. Can you guess what it's about? I'm writing a witchy death book. Go figure. So I am excited to write this book, because I initially had written one and I didn't really like how it turned out, and it didn't really sell that well anyways, and I'm just kind of like, it still wasn't it. And so I've still been kind of mulling it over in the back of the brain, and this time I have outlined it very differently. And so I'm going to be bringing in some elements, but I'm changing a lot of it too, because at the times that, like, I had just taken the rituals that I had written down and used various points in my life and just kind of copy pasted them in. And this time I'm like, no, screw this, because it worked at one point in my life, but it's not gonna work for everybody. And like one of the things is like to make a memorial poppet for when you can't go or they don't have a like public funeral for you to grieve, because a lot of the funeral practices are really for the living to deal with their grief and the loss. A little bit of it is for the magical and like, you know, the religious aspect of like helping the soul move on, but again, I came from an atheist and agnostic background. Funerals are for the living. And so because of that, sometimes you need that closure. And so I've done that a couple of times. And like when Tiptoe Chick passed, I had made a poppet, and as I was making it, there was the live stream of her funeral. So I made it in sort of as it was kind of happening, you know? And then after it concluded and I had finished up my doll, then I went and did my own private ceremony as a way to honor her, because she was pretty influential to my practice and was pretty big for our community at the time, which is weird to think that I started Intertemple of Witchcraft the year she died. But anyways, because her death anniversary is coming up in just a couple days, and so I decided I am going to revamp that, because when I had done that poppet, I used all of the supplies that I have. And I have a lot of herbs that I've collected over the many years. And it was like, well, of course you're gonna add everything, all of this stuff. And it worked really well, especially honoring like an herbal witch, did she use the label of witch at the end? Anyways, she was very into herbs. So it made sense to have a lot of random herbs. But when I think about doing that for like my uncle who had passed away, I'm like, why am I including all of this stuff? And like, if I wanted to do a memorial poppet, like I'd kind of considered it for the most recent death, I was like, I don't even know how, like half this stuff. And like when my mother-in-law passed away, on paper, a long list of ingredients that are like really magical and like, woo, is fantastic. But in reality, when you're grieving, like the last thing you want to do is have to hit up a bunch of different witchy shops trying to find random ingredients. Like getting you stuff here, not a thing. Like you have to buy that online well in advance. And while it's a great, on paper, thing to have for funerals, in reality, when you don't have any time to plan, that's not a tool that you can just get. And so I want to adjust all of my recipes to be like grocery store easy, because if it's as simple as I need to go, and like no more than like 5 ingredients for anything. So if I need to go get like rosemary, that's at the grocery store. Do I need to go get white oak bark or something? No, because you know what? You cannot go to the grocery store and get that, even if it might be like more appropriate for a death thing. Like I'm trying to make it as easy and simple for people who are grieving and are like very emotional, so that they don't have to use a lot of effort when they're already like at their wits' end, because grief can be really hard, especially for unplanned deaths and just all of the emotions that come with it. And so I was like, I need to simplify that. And so that's something that I'm planning to update in this. And then I have sectioned it out a bit better and have it actually in parts, and it's gonna have different words and stuff, and I'm like kind of tempted to even like go to like a local funeral home and be like, can I like give you money to like just read this over and like see if it doesn't, like if none of this makes sense, because like you do this every day, and if I'm missing something or if there's something that like doesn't really make sense. Because the funeral home that we went to for when my grandfather had passed away, they were awesome. I loved the guy who we chatted with. It was hilarious. And so I just feel like that guy, I don't think he would care if I was like, can you read over this and tell me? And honestly, funeral directors usually aren't going to be super weird about death practices, because like that's what they do. They're used to the weirdest stuff. Like, I don't think a lot is gonna faze them. And so I don't think being like, hey, can you tell me if I'm missing anything? I want to do this right. I think it'll go great. And so I'm like wanting to kind of do that, but I'm also really nervous to do that, because that's like going out in like the real world and being like, I'm writing a book, like for reals, because fiction is like whatever. You can kind of brush it off as you're making up your own world. But that one, like the first edition, I had an editor, and I think I gotta find a different editor because, you know, it wasn't what I needed it to be. I need a little bit more of like somebody to like judge, not just grammar and sentence structure and stuff, but like the content of it. And unfortunately, that's really not easy to do in Utah, cause, and like, do I want to go to like the local shops out here and be like, have it as edited as possible, obviously, and then have legitimate beta readers and be like, what would you change? Because the witchcraft community and the people who actually go and do like the deathbed stuff, like they might have a different perspective too. So I'm just like, I want to do this book right. And so right now I've outlined it and I'm starting on the introduction chapter for it. And I'm so excited to actually be writing like a for really book. And so I'm excited to announce it. I don't necessarily have a name. I have a working title. And so right now it's just Project Death, or I guess the Witchcraft Book of Death. Anyway, something. Because I'm also still doing NaNoWriMo for my fiction book next month. But I'm really trying to make it a point of getting more of the author stuff happening, not just videos. It's not that I'm not going to make videos every day, but I also want to get that going too. And so I'm very excited about that because I have a backlog of witchcraft books I want to write, and I've just been like so on the fence about it because it's hard to want to write a book and not have it be the same thing that's already out there. What's gonna make it different? And like the Witchcraft Death book, I haven't found it. Remember, I've said this a bunch of times. It doesn't have what I'm looking for. And so I'm trying to, and like there's still stuff that I'm like, I gotta add that in there too. Cause like I wanna have, if you wanna honor, like, it's a lot. It's a lot. It is going to be, I think I have like 8 or 9 parts to the book and different chapters within and different rituals within and stuff. And so I don't know if they're gonna stay as part 1, part 2, whatever, or if they're going to become just chapters and have like 9 or so chapters and they're just gonna be a little bit long. I haven't decided, but I want to have that actually like a good book. And so I don't know when it's gonna come out. I feel like it's gonna take a while because again, this is the first time I really want to get some beta readers and to just see what they think and like actually try and do this as proper as possible, because even like the witchcraft training books I'm not as worried about, because I would like to write a 3-book series on doing like a witchcraft training of how I would train you if you wanted to train with me. And I don't know if I'll end up writing those or when that'll happen, but like I kind of have them vaguely outlined. Like eventually I'll get there, but those I feel like it's not as high of a stake because there's so many books out there and there's so much that you can learn as a beginner. But like when you're in the throes of grief and loss, you need to just have your hand held and like gently guided, and to have the information and stuff that you need as somebody who is processing a death. And so that's what I want this book to be, as like a resource for when you're a witch and you've lost somebody. Not necessarily being a death doula, your average Jill person, your uncle who's a Mormon, or your aunt who's an atheist, or a famous witch that you knew that passed in 2018 and you want to honor them, or your ancestors that died before you were born but now you want to have a connection with them and how to start that journey. Or when you do have another fellow witch who passes away but you can't be involved, or you are involved and you have to plan the whole funeral and pick the flowers and pick everything that you have to do. Like going through all of those steps, I want a book that's available for witches, because I'm sure there are funeral books out there for like the average person, but coming at it from a witchy perspective and like how to navigate that a little bit, because we've had both. We've had a witchcraft kind of a funeral that we've had to plan the whole thing. We've gone to a lot that we had very little to do with the planning. and other ones where it's like you need to privately mourn because like there's not going to be a funeral, and like, again, funerals are for the living most of the time, and so a lot of it of like how to grieve, how to process. And of course there's a lot of books on grieving, but how to grieve as a witch, and not just in general grieving, you know, like tarot spreads and journal prompts and different stuff like that to help grieve. So anyways, I'm very excited about that project. So I don't know how often you guys want me to be talking about that book. If you want me to like mention when as the journey goes, let me know, but I'm very excited about it. And again, I don't know how long this journey is going to take, but it is a project that I've decided to do. So anyways, those are my Samhain plans for this year. I would love to hear what you guys are doing in the comments down below. Thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names over here. And if you'd like to support me, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Do make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day here. And until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.